All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. I'm Ashley Limbers, the marketing lead here at Encompass Solutions, and I'm happy to be your moderator for this session. For those of you who are new to Encompass Solutions, let me give you a quick introduction. We're a North Carolina-based ERP consulting and implementation firm with over 24 years in business, and we have a global team of just over 40 staff members. We focus exclusively on serving the manufacturing and distribution industries, delivering solutions that help organizations streamline their operations, overcome challenges, and drive growth. And as a premium partner of Epicor, we have nearly 2 decades of experience delivering tailored ERP systems. What truly sets Encompass apart is our partner-first mindset. We don't just implement software, we work closely with our clients to ensure their ERP solutions are tailored, optimized, and aligned with their business goals. In today's session, we will focus on Epicor Kinetic 2025.1, presented by our knowledgeable speaker, John Sherry. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be sent to all registrants. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel, and we'll answer as many as we can during the live Q&A at the end. And lastly, we'd appreciate it if you could take a minute to fill out the quick survey after today's session. It helps us keep improving these events for you. So now let's turn things over to our presenter. Please join me in welcoming John Sherry. John has more than 10 years of experience in the manufacturing and healthcare industries. His journey has taken him from the shop floor as a material handler all the way to the operations manager, giving him firsthand insight into both the tactical and strategic sides of manufacturing. John holds a BS in business management and an MBA, and he has a deep passion for leveraging advanced Epicor modules to drive real operational improvements. So we're excited to have him with us today. So without further ado, let's get started. John, over to you.
Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate the warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Before we get started, I wanted to just go over the safe harbor statement real quick. But essentially, all we're saying here is that these items that you'll see here in this presentation today and anything that you can see moving forward with releases from Epicor, these items are subject to change with or without notice. So do keep that in mind as we go through this. Sometimes some of these things may change a little bit, but just wanted to get that out of the way before we dive in. As far as a roadmap for what we're going to be talking about today, so 2025.1, there are some release themes going on here. I think something that won't surprise anybody on this meeting is worker productivity with AI is a big focus moving forward with Epicor and the applications that they're developing. Additionally, focus on sustainability. So we're going to talk a little bit about carbon cost roll-ups and where we can do those carbon cost roll-ups moving forward. We're going to have a section over our voice in action, right? These are those Epicor ideas that get submitted either by the community or by partners like us here at Encompass. And we'll take a look at some of the things that Epicor has put in place that were actually suggestions from end users. We're going to talk about the extended solutions and some of the accelerated value that has been developed in this release. And then also the digital transformation that's coming along with Kinetic, UX updates, cloud updates, sunsetting of the Epicor Smart Client, which we'll talk about a little bit more in this presentation as well. So we're going to talk about what's new in Kinetic Core first. So the first one, we now have an inactive tag option for our warehouses and our reason codes. So as we know, currently, or prior to 2025.1, I should say, the warehouses and the reason codes didn't have that inactive checkbox that you can find in places like parts and customers and whatnot. And that was leading to confusion at times, sometimes some errors because people were selecting things that were no longer active. And it was leading to some workarounds where we'd have to rename a warehouse like do not use or something along those lines. Epicor has actually added this flag in here. So now we can avoid running into using old warehouses or reason codes that we're no longer using. They've added streamlined reporting for sales rep commissions. So this is more of a technical thing, but for anybody who's ever tried to create a query that extracts data on sales for commissions, it got a little squirrely, right? There was multiple value fields and several tables. The two new views that are in there now are simplified, streamlined for data. It's a lot easier to bring in the views and get the data that we want without catching those errors. And it makes it easier to filter and report on our sales rep commissions. The optimized min-max safety lead time calculation. So this is going to be really nice for a lot of people. Previously, the min-max safety lead times were only under the purchasing section. And so what Epicor has done is they've come in and they've added some additional lead time fields for not only manufactured parts, but transferred parts as well. So now there are lead time fields for manufactured, purchased, and transfer order parts, and the system is going to use the calculation that is appropriate based on the part type that is set on the record in the site record. Carbon cost calculation. So carbon cost roll-up is something that's being rolled out in phases. This is mainly going to affect, as of right now, our European customers and clients that are having to track the carbon cost roll-ups, but California is also passing some laws already. And as we move into the future, I think we can all expect to see more sustainability laws and reporting practices that are required. So what the carbon cost roll-up does is it captures the carbon that is created throughout the process, right? So it's based on the bill of material and the routings, and it basically will add up those carbon values for, the family or parts that we're using it for. These carbon roll-ups can be adjusted in our POs, our quotes, and our jobs. And basically, at the end of the day, what happens is we'll be able to take all of these carbon values that we've gathered along the way in our process, and we're going to be able to post them to statistical counts in the general ledger. Okay, so just keeping pace with that worldwide sustainability initiatives as we move forward with Epicor Kinetic. We've also added in alternative options for urgent MRP planning. So again, this is similar to the min-max safety lead times that we were talking about a moment ago. But prior to 2025.1, you could have a lead time for a part, let's say 30 days. And as long as your requirement was 30 days or further out for that material, MRP would give you the suggestion for the primary supplier that you have listed. You additionally, if it fell underneath those 30 days, we need it faster. There is that urgent planning field sitting there on the part record as well. Again, this is for purchase parts. So if we need that part in 10 days and we had an urgent planner or supplier rather set up, then, it would switch over and give us a suggestion for that urgent planner if it came in under 30 days. Well, now we've actually added in the ability to do this for manufactured parts as well. So taking a look at, if we can purchase it and our supplier lead time is 30 days, but we can manufacture this in say 20 days, then MRP will pick that up, look at the demand date when it's due, and it'll then be able to suggest to us, hey, purchasing it won't get to us in time, but manufacturing it will. And that can go both ways, right? So we can have it being a purchase part, but we can also manufacture it as long as we have a method of manufacture available. Or vice versa, if we normally manufacture it, but we can purchase it quicker and that's what we require, then MRP will pick that up and do that as well now as with the release of 2025.1. So just giving us more flexibility and our solutions for supplying our demand. So some other core Kinetic enhancements here. So the purchase order suggestions is actually now going to confirm if suppliers are active. So it turns out that there were a lot of reports from end users that sometimes when we're going into our purchase order suggestions, we were getting a suggestion from the system to buy from an inactive supplier. So they add the logic in, confirm that it works, that any suggestions coming from the system, whether it's MRP or the purchase order suggestions task itself, that the supplier is actually active and approved before making any suggestion that would involve that supplier. So we're going to be able to avoid some errors going on there. Dynamic attributes value entry. So, previously or in current state prior to 2025.1, the attribute values, we actually had to go into the attribute value entry and add the attribute values that we had there or through some, receipts and stuff like that. What we're able to do now is we're able to use the dynamic attribute value screen actually in the engineering workbench so that as we're designing the requirements for a bill or a method of manufacture, we can go ahead and do that right there in the workbench. It gives us a more intuitive process while we're going through that. And it also helps us with training, not having to pop out into different windows and some other things like that that could be confusing when learning how to use the advanced unit of measure. The other thing that we are also able to do with the attribute values is we're actually able to now specify those when job batching, whether we're using attribute identifiers or revisions. And so basically it's extending the job batching functionality to parts that do have revision or attribute data tied to them. So big quality of life improvements there with the dynamic attributes and advanced unit of measure for us. Another big one that we have here, so those of us who use advanced material management and material request queue and potentially mobile, we all know that we could select multiple items from the material request queue to put into my queue, right? The ones that are the selected queue that we need to work on. The enhanced functionality here is that those of us who use that know that once it was in our own selection, we then had to process each one of these individually to actually process the material move. What we can do now is we can process multiple of those material moves at one time to, save us time. And then also just streamlining and matching our real life practices. People typically don't move one part at a time. They're moving multiple. And so it's going to match up a little more to our real life workflows. Another one that we've been running. And I'm sorry, but my microphone just died. Ashley, you can hear me, correct?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Ashley, can you just confirm that you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. So, overriding the price list checkbox. So, currently, or prior to this release, you would have the override price checkbox listed there in a quote, right? So we go in, the price list doesn't match what we're trying to do with the customer, and so we override the price list. We enter in whatever price it is that we wanted to use. The issue that we were running into is that when we would then convert that quote over to the sales order, it was not maintaining the fact that that checkbox was flagged. And therefore, the price on the sales order would revert back to whatever the sales price list was, right? So what they've done is they made sure that when we convert from a quote and that override price list checkbox is selected, it's now going to carry over to the sales order so that we have the correct pricing on our contracts with our customers. So PCID enhancements, there are going to be multiple phases and there's more stuff coming for PCID enhancements. But right here with 2025.1, we've added, a few of these things in here right here. So we can now return materials directly into a PCID. We can return an assembly back to a PCID, and we can return assembly material back into a PCID. Again, these are just some of the things that they're bringing along. We're trying to eliminate as much of the manual workaround steps that we've had to do with PCIDs up to this point. So there's going to be more enhancements moving forward. But if we have any questions, we can touch on that later. Another thing that Epicor has been doing is this concept that they call story bundles. Okay, so these story bundles are a lot of those kind of user requests for bug fixes or enhancements to the system. And basically what Kinetic is, or not Kinetic, but what Epicor is doing
is that they are taking a lot of these and they're bundling them together so they can get a lot of these smaller enhancements out to us in a more timely manner and a more organized manner. So I think the biggest one here when we're looking on this list for most people as far as quality of life enhancement is the quantity adjustments. So when we do quantity adjustments, if I have a quantity of say 100 and I have material handlers going out into the warehouse and they go by the bin, whether they're going to pull or if they're going to count, and they realize that there's 90 in the bin. Currently, what you would have to do if you're doing a quantity adjustment is you would go into that part, do the quantity adjustment. And if we were going from 100 to 90, we would actually put a quantity adjustment in of -10. Now, with simple math like that, nobody's really bothered. But when we start talking about stuff that's in the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even, we don't want to be doing mental math or having to pull up the calculator on the computer or anything like that. So the enhancement here is that now we can just enter in whatever the quantity actually is, and then it'll take it like that. So if we take that same exact example, we thought we had a quantity of 100, material handler comes by, it's really 90. All we have to do in the quantity adjustment screen now is just put 90, hit save, and it'll decrement the 10 out of our inventory that way. So that's pretty nice for us. The other one as well is our PO totals are not going to include voided lines and releases anymore. So just a little bit of enhancement on the financial side. I'm not going to go over all of these in exhaustion, but you guys can take a look at this and then also review the reporting later. And then there's also the release notes on the Epicor site, as always. Another big enhancement coming our way, particularly, this is specifically for cloud customers, is the ability through the cloud management portal that will be in Kinetic to have customers do self-service. Okay. So the new self-servicing tool will allow us to be able to do these 4 different things that you see here. So we can start, stop, recycle our application servers. We can start or stop task agents. The data model regeneration, what that's talking about is just, refreshing the data with the database refresh or copying data over from, say, live to pilot or live to a third environment, something along those lines. It is important to note that these features are being rolled out in phases. And currently in 2025.1, what we can do is we can copy data from our live environment over pilot, or we can do live over third. But as of right now, we are not able to self-service and copy, say, pilot over live, third over live, pilot over third, or third over pilot. So for right now, it's just copying. If we're doing database, it's just copying the live over the other environments. We can start and stop the application servers and task agents, no problem, in each one of the environments already. And there's more on that on the Epicor site as well. Moving on to what's new in Kinetic tools. So the data fabric functions. So basically what this does is it enables the fabric functions to transmit custom data in our user-defined tables in Kinetic, and it can integrate that with customer EDI, which basically will expand our integration options, adapting data workflows, and streamlining system connections for those tailored interoperations there between the different applications. We have a flexible system setup and new configurations in the Edge agent. And basically what that's doing is it's featuring a new config form, greater installation and management flexibility. And then there's also a custom sysconfig support in multiple versions for faster client relaunch and some things like that. Additionally, here we can see the Kinetic grid funnel filter enhancements. So for those of us who like to use the funnels in Kinetic, I'm a big fan. Previous life, we only were able to select one criteria in the funnel at a time. Now what we can do is we can support multiple criteria in those funnel grids so that we can filter out as needed in our different landing pages. All right, so performance safeguards. So there's been enhancements made to our BAQs and BPMs and functions to improve system stability. Basically, so we can prevent those errors that we could possibly run into with endless loops, or cut down on kind of possible noisy neighbor issues, as we like to say. There's been enhancement for the search for the SAS Enterprise search, allowing us to create and manage our own indexes independently. And then another nice one here is there's been support added for Epicor notifications, so that we can see these notifications quickly in Kinetic via either banners or a notification sidebar, so we're not disrupting workflows as we're working in Kinetic, having to pop out the emails, those kinds of things. So big one here, guys. I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the presentation at the beginning, but the retirement of the Kinetic Smart Client is coming up in May of 2026. So the release of 2025.2 will be the last version where the Smart Client is going to be available. Okay. So in May of 2026, the Smart Client will be sunset, and the classic forms are going to be replaced 100% by the browser user interface. Okay, so the Kinetic browser. That means that users are only going to be able to use the browser interface when using Kinetic. The good thing is it's not a big jump from using the Smart Client to the browser. It's just slightly different navigation. And the browser honestly does run a little bit quicker, a lot smoother, honestly, in my experience, easier to open up tabs, work in multiple windows. And, it's been optimized over the past few years to really run smooth. So again, for those of us using the Smart Client, it's going to be important to be prepared for that transition in May of 2026. So some considerations when we start the transition process. So first and foremost, is analyzing where we're at. So are we in the cloud? Are we on premise? What version of Kinetic or Epicor are we on? And then, moving on to the next step, we need to eliminate what we don't need. So the first question there is, how many customizations do we have? And then out of those customizations, Kinetic's ever evolving. So what release features have come out that may obsolete those customizations? And then B, how many of these customizations do we have that we don't actually need kind of in general? Maybe our business processes have evolved, something along those lines. But we should always be monitoring our ERP, regardless if we're upgrading or not. And then, just kind of our applications up to date as well. After we've kind of determined all that, you're going to want to actually execute the conversions. So that just means moving our customizations up into the newest release, so 2025.1 in this case. And then, of course, the last step is, training our end users. So there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve at times, depending upon, what versions of Kinetic we're coming from. If we're coming from 2024.1, then it's not, you could transition today and not have a problem. But if we're coming from something like Epicor 9, Epicor 10.2.6, there's a little more training and thought that needs to go into it when we're considering a transition process. Moving on to what's new in our Epicor business applications. So these are those kind of extended solutions. I think it's no surprise to anybody that Epicor is also on the forefront of trying to integrate and develop AI tools, since AI is the future of every industry, not just ERP, right? I think everybody's pretty aware of what's going on with the AI movement. So the Epicor AI is called Prism, and Prism is an agentic network tool. It basically helps you communicate with your ERP team to, for information, save us time, and moving forward. Sorry, I did not mean to do that. Moving forward, it's gonna help us invest our time into more of those value-added activities, high-value activities, by performing those kind of menial tasks on our behalf, or with our input, diagnosing problems, suggesting corrective actions, and all that stuff that we're coming to expect from AI. Agentic just really means that it's broken up into multiple agents that come together as a whole to provide the AI services that Prism's designed for. So these are the current agents under Prism. So we have the multimodal agent, and that's basically the ability to analyze images, and it could be products, parts, data, POs, whatever we need, and it's able to actually analyze those images and work with that information. The knowledge agent is something that's integrated in, and that's if we use our help right now in Epicor, and you go to display help and all that kind of stuff, and we can get into kind of ELC documentation or the Epicor documentation on the web. The knowledge agent basically integrates all of that at once, and so you can ask it how to do something, what a feature is, how it works, and the knowledge agent will be able to walk you through those different things. The API filter agent it helps us filter any list of records on a Kinetic page to the specific criteria, rather than select the filters individually in a menu. So just enhance filters. The Kinetic list query agent, this one is going to really help us with BAQs. So for those of us who maybe struggle with designing BAQs and stuff like that, the AI is going to come in here and help us pretty heavily with being able to develop and look at those BAQs and get the information that we need quickly. And then there's also a metric agent, and you can imagine what that's for. It's basically for summary statistics like totals, counts, averages, and so on. And then coming in the future is the ECM agent, so that you can ask questions about any documents in the content management rather than having to dig through the file system. So a lot of good stuff coming forward with Epicor Prism. Field service management. So we have some general enhancements here. So most of these enhancements are just kind of improving the ease of use. So now we can add kitted parts to service reports based on the service report type or condition code. We can now reopen service reports for crucial updates. And then we can also turn quotes directly into a service report once that quote is accepted by a customer. With the code enhancements, we're going to be able to keep track of and analyze and record information about these quotes. So a lot of good enhancements with the field service management. And then also on the mobile side, our field service management mobile users can now utilize the agenda view, which will help them improve time management and productivity. This agenda view basically allows them to see the service reports ordered by scheduled date and time. And then it's also going to give us the ability to report expenses that are directly related to that service report from the mobile app. In addition, the field service management and Kinetic integration will now include an actual time data sync, so that when they're entering, whether it's direct or indirect labor time, it's now going to sync and give us that information directly, and so that our admins can see everything that's going on with our service reports. Epicor Connected Process Control. So Epicor CPC extends Kinetic basically down to the point where work is done on the shop floor by providing step-by-step control, and then it also has digital visual guidance. Once the operators complete what they're doing from the CPC screen, they can report their completed, rejected, and scrap parts and add reason codes as necessary. There's an improved UI with the CPC, and then there's also some plant configuration improvements where they've added, move, add, move, and delete areas, group stations to the center of the screen. So all of that now is centralized, so we're not, looking at weird UI stuff. Epicor Kinetic Warehouse. So Epicor Kinetic Warehouse is developed by Biscuit. And basically what this does is it puts the power of Kinetic directly in our hands and our mobile devices. It is an Android application. In version 5, they offered more, increased configurability, enhancing our control and efficiency. So, they're constantly updating and adding new fields into Epicor Kinetic Warehouse. For those of us who aren't super familiar with it, it's a very powerful tool for material handling. So whether that's shipping and receiving, or just moving stuff around the shop floor, or doing cycle counts, We can scan directly into these fields to reduce data entry errors and those types of things. And it also, prevents us from having to hop off the forklift or whatever material handling, equipment that we're using and going to a workstation and disrupting workflow. They can get their material request queue and everything directly through here. They can print labels automatically through here. So there's a lot of functionality with Epicor Kinetic Warehouse, and it's constantly being updated and upgraded. GrowBI. So we can now set up alerts on up to 3 individual metrics per data set with GrowBI. And there's now a new dashboard called Carrier Performance Scorecard, which you can see over here on the right. And this basically will help us identify ways of improving carrier costs and delivery, scoring them on an overall score. You see carbon impact on here, delivery accuracy, and those kinds of things. Epicor financials. So asset management, Epicor has added the ability to link purchase orders to assets during the procurement process, as well as the ability to set up multiple IDs with different currencies for credit card payments. Also, Epicor FP&A, there's a migration to Azure, which is basically aligning Epicor's overall infrastructure strategy, but it also allows for enhanced security as well. The Epicor data analytics, so this is delivered by Focus. It provides self-serve, self-care, or not self-care, sorry guys, self-service customizable financial statements, smarter intercompany reporting, and some improved workflows. So we can see cash flow improvements, the breakdown of those cash openings, multi-currency support, and the budget allocation tab for more accurate budget planning. Most of the 2025.1 country-specific functionality enhancements for Kinetic were focused on financials. So stuff such as e-invoicing, VAT reports, VAT reports, and then also if you see here under the UK, the extended producer's responsibility. Again, you can see the list here for the country-specific functionalities that have been updated. Epicor ECM. So big news for Epicor ECM. It's now available in the government cloud. In addition, ECM and QuickShip are partnering up to bring us some AP automation for freight. And so that new workflow will allow us to compare actuals versus QuickShip's automated freight costs. You can see we are now able to invoke ECM workflows with our BPMs. So we can use business processes to leverage Epicor now with ECM as well. And then there's also been some UX enhancements with ECM. So Epicor CPQ, so there's been some enhanced security and efficiency. On this particular slide, I'm just going to talk about OAuth 2.0. So OAuth 2.0 is an authorization framework that allows third-party applications to access resources from a service, such as like an API, on behalf of a user by issuing tokens. Basically, it's just increasing our security with the token access and enhancing our ease of integration with external systems. Epicor QuickShip. So in the US, QuickShip has been enabled for shipping for the top 10 carriers in addition to C.H. Robinson. And then QuickShip in the UK is also getting improvements with integration for its 3 top carriers. And the amount of carriers that it has in the UK also covers roughly 80% of carriers. So a lot of stuff being added to QuickShip as well as invoice validation going along with that. Sovos, so this is another tax compliance solution that is coming to the table. So it gives us another choice for sales and use determination, tax exemption, certificate management, tax reporting, tax filing, and more. If you guys want to dive into Sovos, then you can always go and take a look at them. But it is a new tax solution available with Epicor. Another big one is ADP Workforce Now. So ADP and Kinetic, the integration between those two are now available in 2025.1 in the US and Canada. So this improved API integration is now going to allow us to select basically from a wide variety of ADP modules to manage our workforce. So processing payroll, benefits, time, all those things that you can see right here. That integration with ADP has been enhanced to allow us to do those things now with 2025.1. The next one here is the Epicor Learning Center. So we've talked a lot about kind of upgrades, sunsetting the smart client in 2026, all these kind of new improvements with 2025.1 and the different releases. A big part of learning about these new features is all of this is available in the Epicor Learning Center. And Epicor has been working really hard to make this a more intuitive, modern UI. They've made it now to where when you go search by roles, you can see all of the suggested or required courses by role, by certification, by subject. So they made a lot of really good improvements to that. The other thing is it's also easier to collaborate, assign roles or assign courses that you want employees to take or for yourself to take. And then the search has been cleaned up to actually return the courses that we're looking for rather than some of the squirrely digging that we used to have to do in the past. I can't recommend the Epicor Learning Center enough. Back when I first became a consultant, the Epicor Learning Center is what I leaned on heavily to learn the application, and it's a great place to get started no matter what you're trying to do in the system. So go take a look at the new Epicor Learning Center. I think you guys will enjoy it. I know I have. But yeah, the new Epicor Learning Center is going to help us all out. I think with that, that is all I have there for Ashley. So I will open it up for questions.
Thank you, John. We'll now take a few minutes for questions. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, please type your questions into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. And let's see if we have any questions. All right, John, our first question, what kind of training do you recommend for teams transitioning from an older version?
Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit at the end here with the Epicor Learning Center. So the first thing when we're transitioning from an older version to a new version is understanding what has changed. So on Epic Web, there's always the release notes for the different versions as they're released. So reviewing those release notes is always recommended. And then also the Epicor Learning Center going in and seeing those new things on whatever version it is we're upgrading to. So in this case, 2025.1. Outside of that, if we're moving from a much older version to Kinetic, so like say 9, 10.2.6, 8, Vantage, anything, really 10.2.6 and earlier, I would really recommend getting together with us or a consultant to help us do kind of a fit gap analysis and training on the new, workflows in the newer versions of Epicor.
Next question, are there plans for the cloud management portal to come to GovCloud? And is there a time frame?
So for government cloud, I do not have a direct answer for that. That's something I can look into. I know that they are rolling out some more stuff for the public cloud. I would imagine government cloud, if we're going to do it, it's going to be a little bit later to make sure that all the security stuff is up to snuff. But I don't have a direct answer for that. I'll get it for you.
Yeah, you can just circle back with us and get that answer for you. How can we evaluate if we're ready to upgrade or if we should wait?
How do we evaluate when we should upgrade or what?
Or if we should wait?
Gotcha. So one thing is kind of like with any software upgrade is we need to take into consideration how far back are we. So stuff is always getting sunset, less support, less answers. And then, development's always going to be focused on the newer stuff for bug support and enhancements. I think one of the biggest things is, do we see, enhancements in these releases that directly impact what we do as a business? So does it make our workflows more efficient? In general, I wouldn't lag behind too far, right? We don't want to get multiple years behind releases. But if we're looking to upgrade on a more frequent basis, I would base it off of how does it make our workflows more efficient. If we fall behind more than a couple of years, I would upgrade anyway, just because of continued, enhancements to the system performing better, all those kind of things that get tweaked, notifications and all that stuff.
All right, it looks like that's all of our questions that we have for now. John, was there anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that covers everything. Thank you again for having me, and I want to thank everyone here who joined us today. It's been a pleasure being able to present for you.
Wonderful. Thank you again, John, and thank you to everyone who's attended. We hope today's session was informative and helpful. Be sure to keep an eye on your inbox for the recording, and please don't forget to fill out the short survey after the webinar. We really appreciate your feedback. And if you'd like to learn more about our upcoming Manufacturing Excellence Summit or other events, resources, or ERP solutions, feel free to visit our website. John, if you can just transition the slide, or you can connect with us directly and you can see that information on the next slide. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Is he gonna go to the next one? We can't hear you.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you. We thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.